Alright, welcome to our conversation about tool marks and impressions. So we'll start out defining the term, any impression, abrasion, or cut when contact appears between a tool and an object. Contrary to a type of chemical or biological evidence, this would be a type of physical evidence, which is still categorized under circumstantial evidence. You remember that when we zoom out, we have direct evidence, which is that of an eyewitness testimony. And then circumstantial evidence in contrast to that, which is anything found as physical, biological, or chemical evidence, the focus mainly of our course. So physical evidence within that. Even tools that are produced to be exactly the same pick up many differences, making them types of individual evidence. Whether that's in the manufacturing and certainly in the subsequent use of that. Any kind of nick or imperfection in the tool can provide a very traceable individual type of evidence. And that can link the tool to a crime scene, possibly the owner. So tools, in increasing our ability to handle manual tasks, can also be used in crimes. We talked a little bit about how that can lead to a particular criminal. And we talked about this serving as circumstantial evidence. So one type of tool mark impression is an indentation mark. That's when the tool is pressed against a softer surface. Distinctive marks are left. The hardness of the tool is going to influence the marks that will result and can include information about the size of the tool. An abrasion mark is when the surface can be worn away by the tool. So the harder the object will cause abrasions on the softer surface. And then lastly, cutting marks. So these are edged instruments that can penetrate a softer object. So this is interesting. These are examples of different types of saws and their effect as a cut mark on bone. I read a book called Beyond the Body Farm, which we read some excerpts from this year, and I want to read a paragraph to you. This is a case that Dr. Bass worked, and it has to do with identifying particular knife marks on bone. So he says, I had seen numerous cut marks in human bones by this point in my career. Scalped Native American skulls, surgically amputated limbs, crudely dismembered torsos. I perused dozens of micrographs of saw marks in human bones made by one of my PhD students, Steve Symes, in the course of a pioneering dissertation cataloging the varieties of marks saw blades can leave as they push, pull, spin, and otherwise chew through the skeleton. This mark had clearly not been made by the back and forth motion of a handsaw or the rotating blade of a circular saw. This cut mark had been inflicted in one motion with a sharp, thin-bladed implement. So he has a graduate student, PhD student, who actually specialized, did his dissertation on the effect of different kinds of saw marks on bone. There are other types of experts that specialize in tool mark investigation, and their expert witness can be heard in court. In order to document correctly, you first would want to photograph the evidence with a scale. And you also want to measure the size of the impression as well. One step that can also be taken is to make a cast, which can preserve that tool mark impression in more of a three-dimensional manner that can be presented in court as well. And before casting occurs, one should dust for fingerprints as well. Okay, so in collecting and preserving, you want to correctly label the evidence, wrap small objects with clean paper and place them in containers or plastic bags, pack large objects in cartons or boxes, and then record the facts of where it was collected, and of course maintain the chain of custody. In order to analyze the tool mark evidence, the photomicrographs, which Dr. Bass referred to, may be taken with a comparison microscope. Well, the photographs can be taken with any kind of compound light microscope, but The nice thing about the comparison microscope is that an investigator could look at, let's say, the marks that were left at a crime scene by a tool, and then marks that are known to have happened from suspect 2's screwdriver, and you can compare those side by side, one eye looking at one sample, the other looking at the other sample, seeing them at the same time. There are now toolmark databases with images that are acquired by the comparison microscopes. And then also computers being used to statistically analyze the toolmark patterns. So when this is presented in court, then along with the testimony, original evidence casting and magnified images may be submitted as well. Alright, so I'd like to say thank you for joining in on tool marks as evidence.